They tried to dump my brother's $250,000 debt on me, so I smiled, said sure. Then took everything they owned and left them with nothing but regret. My name is Riley, I'm 30, and what happened that night became the most defining moment of my life. The night my family tried to bury me under my brother's debt, but ended up burying themselves instead. For as long as I can remember, I've been the responsible one. The quiet, hardworking daughter who never asked for anything, who paid her own way through college, and who built a stable career from scratch. I run a small but successful consulting firm, and I've worked hard for every bit of peace I have. My brother Ethan, though, is the complete opposite. He's 32, reckless, and always broke. He's the type of man who can burn through a fortune and still walk around acting like the world owes him more. He's taken out loans he never paid back, maxed out credit cards, and even used other people's names to do it, including mine once. My parents have always been blind to his actions. They've spent years cleaning up his messes, bailing him out, and pretending he's some misunderstood genius who just needs another chance. I, on the other hand, became the villain, the cold daughter who didn't support her family. Over time, I pulled away. We kept things polite, but distant. I stopped expecting fairness. I stopped expecting love. So when they invited me to a special dinner last weekend, I knew something was wrong. My gut told me they wanted something from me, but against my better judgment, I went. Maybe I wanted closure, or maybe I wanted to see just how far they'd go this time. The evening started awkwardly. My mom was being unnaturally sweet, complimenting my hair, asking about my clients, and pretending like we were some happy, close-knit family. My dad even pulled out a dusty bottle of expensive wine, the kind he only opened when he needed a favor. Ethan sat across from me, with that familiar smirk that made my skin crawl. After the toasts about family unity and sticking together, my mom reached under the table and slid a beautifully wrapped box toward me. Her eyes were glittering with a strange kind of anticipation. "This is for you, sweetheart," she said, as my dad and Ethan exchanged looks. I slowly pulled off the ribbon and lifted the lid, expecting maybe a sentimental gift. But inside was a thick folder. At first, I thought it might be some old family papers or a set of documents for my business. But as I opened it, my heart dropped. Inside were pages and pages of financial statements, credit card bills, default notices, and loan agreements, all adding up to a total of $250,000. My name appeared on several documents, next to Ethan's. I stared at it in shock. "What is this?" I finally asked. My dad cleared his throat, his tone calm but firm. "You're doing well, Riley. It's time you help your brother. You always said family comes first." I blinked slowly, my mind trying to process what I was hearing. "I said family comes first. You all just ignored that I'm part of the family too." My mom's smile fell instantly, her voice turning cold. "Ethan needs a fresh start. You have the means to give it to him. We've already spoken to the bank. All you have to do is sign the papers inside the box." For a moment, no one moved. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Then I pushed the box back across the table and said calmly, "Absolutely not." Ethan rolled his eyes. "You're so selfish, Riley. I would have done it for you." I let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "You once pawned my laptop while I was sleeping." That's when Dad lost control. He shot up from his chair, slamming his hand on the table so hard the glasses rattled. "You ungrateful brat," he barked. "After everything we've done for you." I met his gaze, my voice steady. "You mean after 20 years of ignoring me while funding Ethan's mistakes?" And then it happened. He grabbed his wine glass and threw it straight into my face. The cold liquid splashed across my dress, the red staining the fabric like blood. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from pure, burning rage. My mom shot to her feet and screamed, "Get out. You're no daughter of ours." I stood slowly, wiping my face with a napkin, my heart pounding with years of hurt that finally had a place to go. Without saying another word, I turned and walked out. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't over. 30 minutes later, sitting in my car in the dark, I made a call. My voice was calm, my decision final. The wheels were already in motion. Back at the house, just as they were settling back into their seats, a loud knock echoed through the dining room. My dad opened the door, only to find a man in a black blazer holding a brown envelope. "Mr. Carter?" he asked. The man nodded. "You've been served." His voice was steady, almost professional. My mom screamed. My dad stood frozen, staring at the envelope like it was a bomb about to go off. Ethan, ever the fool, snatched it from his hands and tore it open. His smug expression faded instantly. Inside was a civil lawsuit filed by me, his own sister, for fraudulent debt exposure and identity misuse. Because here's the truth, when I opened that folder at dinner and saw my name tied to Ethan's debts, I already knew what it meant. But what they didn't know was that I had been watching for weeks. I'd pulled my credit reports, contacted my banks, and locked down every account I owned. I had documentation of every forged signature and every unauthorized link to my identity. The moment they tried to pin that debt on me, they triggered a legal chain reaction they couldn't escape. And the best part? The house they lived in, the very one they thought they owned, was actually mine. The house my parents lived in was not truly theirs anymore, though they had no idea. 3 years ago, when they fell behind on their mortgage for the third time, I quietly stepped in. I created a shell LLC, bought their lien, and refinanced the property under my name. Every monthly payment they made after that went through a property management company that I owned behind the scenes. They thought they were paying their bank. In reality, they were paying me. And hidden within their agreement was a single clause: any fraudulent financial activity or misuse of the property would result in immediate forfeiture of tenancy. That clause wasn't just a precaution, it was my safety net. So when they tried to use my identity to cover Ethan's debt, that clause automatically activated. At that very moment, they lost the right to live in the house they called their home. Back inside, my mom collapsed onto the floor, crying hysterically. My dad stood frozen, clutching the envelope like it was a weapon turned against him. Ethan pacing back and forth, yelling, "She can't do this. She's bluffing." But then, another knock came at the door. This time it was a courier carrying a second envelope, addressed directly to Ethan. Inside was a notice of wage garnishment. The lawsuit had already been accepted by the court. His employer would be required to deduct half his paycheck until the debt was resolved. By that night, my family's group chat was exploding. My mom texted first, "Riley, please, this is a misunderstanding. Don't ruin us over a dinner." My dad followed with, "Drop the lawsuit. You're overreacting. Family is messy. We fix things privately." Ethan, of course, sent something cruel. "You snake. You've always been jealous of me. Hope you're happy." I replied just once. "You threw wine in my face and handed me $250,000 in fraud. This is me fixing it privately." Then I turned off my phone and slept peacefully for the first time in years. The next morning, at 6:12 a.m., I got the first confirmation. Ethan's car had been repossessed from the driveway. I knew because I paid the towing company extra for a time-stamped photo. By 9:43 a.m., I received an alert that the old joint bank account Ethan had accessed was frozen under fraud investigation. By 11:12 a.m., my assistant walked into my office and said there was a woman downstairs claiming to be my mother. I straightened my blazer and said calmly, "Call security. She doesn't have an appointment." That afternoon, my phone buzzed nonstop. Mom texted, "Your father is having chest pains. Please stop this before it kills him." Dad texted, "You'll regret this. We took you in, raised you, and this is how you repay us." Ethan texted, "You ruined my life. Hope you're proud." I didn't respond to any of them. The irony of them calling me heartless after trying to dump their son's criminal debt on me was almost comical. Later that week, I got a call from someone I hadn't heard from in years, Mr. Daly, an old family friend who used to work in finance. His voice was hesitant, but kind. "Riley, I wasn't going to get involved," he said, "but you should know something." He told me that Ethan's original $250,000 debt wasn't just from reckless spending or gambling. It was much worse. He had actually forged loan documents using my dad's credentials, borrowing against my parents' old business without their knowledge. When the payments defaulted, my dad thought it was a bank error. But when the truth came out, instead of reporting Ethan to the authorities, they tried to cover it up, and now they wanted me to quietly pay it off. That call changed everything. I finally understood that when they handed me that gift at dinner, they weren't asking for help. They were asking me to clean up a crime. And they expected me to do it out of family loyalty. That evening, I sent one final message to the family group chat. You tried to bury me under your son's mess. You threw wine in my face. You screamed at me to get out. Now you're out of my accounts, out of my house, and out of my life. Then I locked the chat and deleted their numbers. 3 weeks passed. On the 21st day after that dinner, my parents received another hand-delivered letter from my lawyer. It wasn't an email. It wasn't regular mail. It was a registered courier envelope that required their signatures. Inside was a legal notice to vacate the property within 30 days for breach of lease due to fraudulent activity. Panic erupted. They called the property management office, begging to speak to someone in charge. The receptionist redirected them to the legal department, which then redirected them to my lawyer. The lawyer simply replied, "The lease was voided due to breach of contract. You have 30 days to leave. This matter is non-negotiable." My dad tried everything, calling in old favors, reaching out to former colleagues, even posting online asking for legal advice. But nothing worked. The contract was airtight. Every payment they'd ever made went straight through a network of companies that led back to me. I didn't just own the house. I owned every rule that came with it. My mom tried a different approach. She called me crying, her voice cracking through the phone. "Riley, please, where are we supposed to go? We're too old for this. Can't you just talk to us?" I let her speak, listening to every word, and then I replied softly, "You told me to get out. So I am. And I'm taking the roof with me." Ethan, meanwhile, was spiraling. He thought the wage garnishment was temporary until his HR department called him in for a meeting. They informed him that they had received full documentation of his legal case and were required by law to cooperate. Half his paycheck was gone. His credit score collapsed overnight. His car was repossessed a second time, this time from a friend's driveway during a party. The repo man even sent me a small glass display case with a miniature tow truck inside as a thank you gift. It still sits on my desk today. A few days later, they showed up at my office unannounced. All 3 of them. My receptionist called upstairs to ask if I wanted to see them. I looked at the security feed, saw their faces, and simply said, "No." Security escorted them out onto the sidewalk, but before they left, I had one final gesture waiting for them. The building manager handed them a letter signed by me. It read, "Your presence is no longer welcome in my place of business, residence, or life. You may direct all future communication through legal counsel. This conversation is over permanently." Weeks later, my Aunt Marianne, the only relative who still spoke to me, reached out. She begged me to meet them one last time. "They're broken, Riley. Humiliated. Maybe they've learned their lesson. Please just hear them out." Against my better judgment, I agreed, but on my terms. The meeting would take place in my office boardroom. It would be recorded. They would be searched for devices at the door. And they would sit while I stood. They entered the room like ghosts, my mom with puffy eyes, my dad with his head low, and Ethan limping dramatically like he wanted sympathy. I said nothing. Instead, I placed a box on the table, the same box they'd handed me that night. "You gave me a gift," I said slowly. "One that cost $250,000 and a glass of wine." Then I opened it. Inside were photocopies of every forged document Ethan had used, highlighted credit reports, the deed to their house showing my LLC, and a USB containing the audio from that dinner. The laughter, the accusations, the wine splash. Their faces fell instantly. I looked at my mom. "You said I was no longer your daughter. You meant it. So did I." Then I turned to my dad. "You tried to sacrifice me to save him. And you were ready to lie to do it." Finally, I faced Ethan. "You said I'd pay your debt whether I liked it or not. You were half right. Someone paid. But it wasn't me. I walked out without looking back. They didn't follow. 3 months later, I renovated the house. Fresh paint, new floors, new energy. My parents moved into a small apartment near the freeway. Ethan floated between friends' couches. Every few weeks, I still get a no-caller ID ring. I never answer. Before the new tenants moved in, I left a note in the mailbox. It read, "This house was almost a cage. Now it's a home. May yours be filled with love, not guilt." Sometimes I pass by the wine aisle at the grocery store and smile. Because I didn't just escape their mess. I took control of it. They tried to drown me in red wine and debt that night. Instead, I rose above it, with my head high and the keys in my hand. If you enjoy stories of justice, power, and emotional closure, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this one.